Hey yo, everyone! Mobile gaming. What do we think about it? In the early days of smartphones, it mainly consisted of smaller sized apps like Angry Birds or Cut the Rope, but in 2024, new tech has allowed publishers to port over some really impressive AAA games onto our devices. Just within the last year or so, we've seen the release of Resident Evil Village and Assassin's Creed Mirage onto the iPhone 15 Pro. Even though these games have wild success on traditional game consoles, the numbers on mobile are not exactly promising. Despite that, this is an incredible feat of modern technology, and I think worth digging into a little bit deeper. So today, let's talk about the current state of mobile gaming and where it could possibly be heading into the future. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. Alright, let's get it. Alrighty, so like I mentioned earlier, mobile gaming has its roots in smaller, bite-sized games, such as Jetpack Joyride or Subway Surfers. These type of games are perfect for mobile gaming. Easy to jump in and out of the action whenever you find yourself with some extra time, whether that be sitting on the bus or waiting in the doctor's office. As the years have gone on, we've seen mobile games evolve and become more sophisticated. Some games are nice little ports from older console generations like LEGO Star Wars, while others are fully fledged out titles built specifically for the mobile market. And because almost everyone in the modern world has some sort of smartphone, the potential audience for all of these games is massive. And the numbers back this up. Believe it or not, but mobile gaming revenue accounted for almost half of all the video game revenue pulled in for 2023. A whopping $89.9 billion. That's 49% of the industry's revenue. As technology evolves, smartphones will be able to run increasingly more intense games, just like the ones we saw released recently for the newest iPhone. So where do we think this trend, I guess if you want to call it that, is going? If almost 50% of all video game revenue is coming from the mobile audience, then surely publishers will begin to shift their attention to mobile gaming, right? We've seen time and time again that developers are always chasing the money. Whether it be microtransactions or live service games, publishers are constantly looking for ways to increase their revenue with the latest trends. So why not turn to the biggest gaming audience in the world? Sure, on paper this makes total sense. Everyone has a smartphone. Everyone wants to play their favorite game. So why not put their favorite game on their smartphone so they can play whenever and wherever they want? Well, if the recent AAA releases for the iPhone are any indicator, people just don't really want this. Just a few weeks ago, Mobile Gamer released a report documenting the sales of a few different AAA games for the iPhone 15, including Assassin's Creed Mirage, Resident Evil 7, Resident Evil 4 Remake, Resident Evil Village, and Death Stranding. Surprisingly, Death Stranding sold the best, considering that it's such a fairly new IP compared to legacy franchises like Resident Evil and Assassin's Creed. If we look at Resident Evil 7 as an example here, you can see that since its initial release in 2017, it has sold over 13 million copies. That's pretty freaking good for a single-player horror franchise. Resident Evil 7 was basically a reinvention of the series, switching to first person for the first time and really leaning into the horror aspect. People loved this game, and it kind of kickstarted this current Resident Evil renaissance, so it just makes sense to introduce this game to the mobile audience. Since the game's iOS release on July 2nd of 2024, the game has been downloaded a little bit over 83,000 times. Okay, not great for a mobile game, especially considering this is a prestige AAA port. On top of that, the 83,000 number is just for the free demo. If you want the full experience, you have to pay $20 to unlock it. I mean, on the surface level, that's not a terrible deal. Resident Evil 7 is certainly worth $20. So how many people bought the real thing? Yikes, apparently no one. According to the report from Mobile Gamer, less than 2,000 people actually bought the game. That means out of the 83,000 downloads, less than 3% actually converted to paying for the game. That is brutal. The report says that Capcom has earned an estimated $28,000 in revenue, but that doesn't include the 30% cut that Apple takes from all App Store purchases. I mean, my goodness, that is just terrible. I couldn't find how much it cost exactly for Capcom to port the game over to iOS, but I imagine it was more than $28,000. Now, Apple very well could have subsidized some of that cost to use Resident Evil 7 as a demo for how powerful the iPhone 15 is, but if not, then I just don't really see how Capcom or any other studio could look at this as anything other than a complete flop. But for some reason, I just have this itch in the back of my brain that this won't be the last AAA game we see ported to mobile devices. It's pretty obvious that the mobile gaming market is just simply massive, and at the moment, basically the Wild West when it comes to AAA publishing. If a company was able to break through and really find a way to convince that audience to buy their game, the numbers would be astronomical. Last year in 2023, over 1.14 billion smartphones were sold into the market. At the time of me writing this, those AAA games are only available for iOS, so let's just look at Apple's cut of the pie here. Out of the 1.14 billion units sold last year, 20% were Apple devices. Now obviously not all of these sales were the new devices capable of running Resident Evil 7, but for the sake of conversation, let's say that half of them were the new iPhone 15 Pro. So 10% of 1.14 billion is 228 million units, just in 2023 alone. For context, the Nintendo Switch is currently dominating the mobile gaming market and is about to pass the PS2 for the best-selling gaming console of all time. At the time of me writing this, the lifetime sales for the Switch are 143 million units. In just 1 year, the iPhone sales dwarf the 7-year lifetime sales of the Switch. Now imagine if Capcom or Ubisoft or any other big publisher could convert even just a fraction of those numbers. And this is just Apple we're talking about here. I'm not even including the Samsung numbers. So it's no surprise that when we look at the total gaming revenue for 2023, mobile gaming makes up the largest chunk. There are just so many people out there who game on their phone. Yet despite that, the numbers for AAA games like Resident Evil 7 would say that that audience doesn't really exist out there. I mean, 83,000 is like a fart in the wind compared to 228 million. So I guess my question is, why aren't people buying these games? As far as I can find, the gameplay for these AAA titles is surprisingly smooth. There may be the occasional stutter or graphical glitch depending on the settings you're running, but for the most part, it's a fully fleshed out AAA game playable on your iPhone. It really is incredible. Yet people just aren't buying this. I couldn't find any one specific reason as to why these games flopped, but I think if we just look at the current state of mobile gaming as it is, we can get a decent idea. Have you guys ever heard of Occam's razor? Basically, this is a philosophy that the most obvious explanation is probably the correct one. In the case of mobile AAA ports, the most obvious explanation, at least to me, for people passing on these games is because of the touch controls. Look, it's incredible that developers were able to pack these games into a device that fits into your pocket, but if the screen is covered in these half-transparent button controls, no one is going to want to play that. It's so difficult to manage the buttons without covering up your screen in the process. And for games where you need a very precise reaction, touch controls are almost unplayable. On a controller, you can get your fingers ready and on the button, but you can't do that with touch controls. You just have to kind of hover right above the part of the screen that you'll need to press, which just ends up becoming a little bit fatiguing and honestly annoying because now you're covering up the screen. On a positive note, you can connect your controller to use, but at that point, why not just play the game on your TV with a much more powerful console? I don't want to bring a controller with me just to enjoy the game on my phone. It kind of defeats the purpose, you know? That's another reason as to why I think these games flopped. I think people prefer to play mobile games that are easier to manage in little snippets. Like, I just want to pass the time for a few minutes, so I'm gonna play some Candy Crush or check on my Clash of Clans, not grind through a mission in Assassin's Creed Mirage. For games like that, games where there's a bit more of a commitment, I want to sit down and fully enjoy it, especially if I'm dropping $50 for the game. I think that the price factor also plays a major role in the negative perception of these AAA mobile games. Traditionally, App Store games are like $1, or in most cases, free to play. Then all of a sudden, we get this $50 bomb dropped on us out of nowhere. I'm not sure if it's just because of mental conditioning that apps aren't worth it, or if people just don't want to spend that much money on a mobile game, but $50 is just too steep of a price. There are plenty of really good mobile games out there that are in the $1 to $10 range, if not straight up free to play. For whatever reason, these free-to-play mobile games do incredibly well. Assassin's Creed Mirage, which is a legit AAA title, has had 123,000 free demo downloads since its launch in June of 2024. Assassin's Creed Rebellion, a free-to-play mobile game, had almost 2 million downloads in the same time span. And people were actively buying microtransactions in that game. According to app figures, that's a gross revenue increase of 612% compared to Mirage. I think that over the years, people have just preferred simpler, easier to digest mobile games rather than these crammed AAA titles. Sure, the bigger game might have more depth and, I guess, a little bit more traditional content, but that's just not really what the mobile audience wants. And I think people are just more willing to drop the occasional dollar or so in microtransactions rather than a $50 one-time fee. So after all of these flops, the question remains, will this trend continue? Will developers keep trying to port over their AAA games to the mobile scene? I honestly don't really know. I think so. Maybe if Apple or Samsung are willing to pay for some of the development costs, but even then, I just don't know. I do think that Apple wants to become the big face of mobile gaming where developers will want to put their game there over the competition. Like I said earlier, if you can get a hit on the App Store, that's a way bigger platform than all of the other 3 major consoles combined. And if that hit is an exclusive, oh my goodness, people would lose their mind. As the old saying goes, consoles don't sell games. Games sell consoles. So why couldn't they sell iPhones as well? But I want to know what you guys think about all this. We're kind of in uncharted waters right now when it comes to this new generation of mobile games. Would you want to play a big AAA game on your phone? If yes, what game would that be? Or do you think that this is just a passing fad that will fade away over the next couple of years? I'm interested to hear your thoughts down below in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. It means a lot. I appreciate you guys as always, and I will catch you in the next one.